The pregnant woman screamed in pain as her water suddenly burst in the middle of the crowded supermarket. But instead of helping her, the manager pointed at the door and shouted, "Throw her outside before customers start recording this mess." The entire supermarket froze, shopping carts stopped rolling. Customers turned sharply toward the woman lying helplessly on the shiny floor tiles, clutching her swollen stomach as another painful contraction hit her body. A soft cry escaped her trembling lips as tears rolled down her cheeks. "Please, somebody help me," she whispered weakly. A young supermarket worker named Daniel immediately dropped the carton of bottled drinks he was arranging and rushed toward her in panic. Mom, are you okay?" he asked breathlessly, kneeling beside her. The woman winced in pain and grabbed his arm tightly. "My baby. I think the baby is coming." Daniel's eyes widened in fear. He looked around desperately at the crowd of people watching without moving. "Somebody call an ambulance," he shouted loudly, but before anyone could react, the store manager stormed forward angrily in her high heels, her face filled with irritation instead of concern. "What is happening here?" she snapped. Daniel pointed nervously at the pregnant woman. "Mom, she's in labor. We need help quickly." But instead of sympathy, the manager's expression darkened. She looked around and noticed several customers already pulling out their phones to record. Her voice rose immediately. No, this nonsense cannot happen inside my supermarket." Daniel stared at her in disbelief. "Mom, she can barely breathe." The manager ignored him completely and pointed toward the entrance. "Security!" 2 guards rushed over instantly. "Take this woman outside now, before customers start posting videos online." The pregnant woman cried out again as another contraction hit her hard. "Please, don't push me." One of the guards hesitated. "Mom, she looks very serious." "I don't care," the manager barked. "This place is for customers, not childbirth." Daniel's jaw tightened angrily. He looked down at the helpless woman shaking on the floor and felt his chest burn with frustration. "Mom, we can't throw her outside like this," he said firmly. The manager turned sharply toward him. "And who asked for your opinion?" Daniel swallowed hard, but stayed beside the woman. "She needs a hospital immediately." The manager folded her arms coldly. "Then call an ambulance and wait outside. I will not have this dirty scene inside my store." The woman suddenly screamed in pain, clutching Daniel's shirt tightly. "Please, help me." Daniel looked at her frightened face and made his decision instantly. He carefully slid one arm behind her back and another beneath her knees, trying to lift her gently from the floor. The manager's voice thundered across the supermarket. "Put her down right now." Daniel froze briefly. "Mom, if you touch that woman again, you will lose your job today." Silence fell heavily across the store. Customers watched nervously. Even the security guards looked uncomfortable. Daniel slowly looked from the manager back to the woman crying helplessly in his arms. Sweat formed on his forehead. This job was all he had. His widowed mother depended on him. His younger sister's school fees depended on him. Losing this job could destroy everything. But then the pregnant woman grabbed his wrist weakly and whispered through tears, "Please, don't leave me." Daniel's heart broke instantly. He lifted his head slowly and looked directly at the manager. "Then fire me." Gasps spread across the supermarket. The manager's eyes widened in shock. "What did you just say?" Daniel ignored her completely. He tightened his grip carefully around the woman and began carrying her toward the exit while customers moved aside for him. The manager shouted furiously behind him, "You are finished in this supermarket. Do you hear me? Finished." But Daniel kept walking. Outside, heavy afternoon traffic filled the busy streets. Daniel looked around desperately before spotting a taxi dropping off passengers nearby. "Taxi!" he yelled loudly. The driver quickly rushed over after seeing the pregnant woman crying in pain. Together they carefully placed her in the back seat. Daniel jumped inside beside her. "Please, nearest hospital, fast." The taxi sped into traffic as the woman groaned painfully beside him. Daniel held her trembling hand tightly. "You'll be okay, Mom. Please stay strong." Tears streamed down her face as she struggled to breathe. "My husband, my phone." Daniel quickly searched through her handbag until he found her phone ringing repeatedly. The caller ID read, "My love." Daniel answered immediately. "Hello?" A deep, worried male voice responded instantly. "Sophia, where are you? I've been calling." Daniel swallowed nervously. Sir, I'm not Sophia. Your wife is in labor right now. We're heading to St. Mary's Hospital. Silence filled the line for one terrifying second before the man spoke again, panic filling his voice. What? Is she okay? Daniel glanced at the woman shaking beside him. She's in serious pain, sir. Please come quickly. I'm on my way, the man replied before ending the call immediately. The taxi finally screeched to a stop outside the hospital entrance. Nurses rushed out with a stretcher as Daniel helped carry Sophia inside. Delivery room now, one nurse shouted. Sophia screamed loudly as they wheeled her away through the hospital doors. Daniel stood frozen outside the maternity ward, breathing heavily as sweat soaked through his supermarket uniform. His hands still trembled from everything that had happened. Minutes later, loud footsteps echoed through the hallway as a tall man in an expensive black suit rushed into the hospital surrounded by 2 bodyguards. Fear and panic covered his face. Where is my wife? He demanded urgently. Daniel immediately stood up. Sir, they just took her inside. The man grabbed Daniel's shoulders anxiously. What happened to her? Daniel hesitated briefly before explaining everything that happened at the supermarket. As he spoke, the man's expression slowly changed from fear into something darker, something dangerous. His jaw tightened. They tried to throw my pregnant wife outside? Daniel nodded slowly. Only because they didn't want customers recording videos. The man looked away silently for a moment, fury burning in his eyes. Then suddenly, the sound of a newborn baby crying echoed through the hallway. Everyone froze. The hospital doors opened slowly as a smiling nurse stepped out. Congratulations, she said warmly. It's a baby girl. The billionaire stood frozen outside the delivery room as the cries of his newborn daughter echoed softly through the hospital hallway. Relief washed across his face instantly, but it lasted only a few seconds before his expression darkened again. His eyes slowly turned toward Daniel. Take me through everything again, he said quietly. Daniel swallowed hard and repeated the entire story from the beginning. How Sophia collapsed inside the supermarket, how customers stood watching helplessly, how the manager ordered security to drag her outside, and how she threatened to fire him for helping her. The billionaire listened silently without interrupting, but the dangerous calm on his face frightened everyone around him more than shouting would have. What's your name? He finally asked. Daniel, sir. How long have you worked there? Almost 8 months. The man nodded slowly. And you were willing to lose your job for my wife? Daniel looked down awkwardly. I only did what anybody should do, sir. The billionaire stared at him carefully for a long moment before speaking again. No. Most people would have looked away. Before Daniel could reply, the delivery room doors opened again and a nurse stepped out smiling warmly. The mother is asking for her husband. The billionaire hurried inside immediately while Daniel remained outside, exhausted and emotionally drained. Inside the room, Sophia lay weakly on the hospital bed, holding her newborn daughter gently against her chest. Tears filled her eyes the moment she saw her husband. Marcus, she whispered softly. Marcus rushed to her side and kissed her forehead carefully. You scared me, he murmured. Sophia smiled weakly before glancing down lovingly at the baby. She's beautiful. Marcus nodded emotionally, gently touching his daughter's tiny hand, but a few seconds later his face became serious again. Sophia. What exactly happened? Her eyes slowly filled with tears. They wanted to throw me outside. Marcus clenched his jaw tightly. Sophia explained everything slowly between exhausted breaths, how her contractions suddenly started while shopping, how she fell to the floor in pain, how people gathered around watching, how the manager cared more about customers recording videos than her condition, and finally how Daniel stood against everyone to help her. If he didn't help me, she whispered emotionally, I don't know what would have happened to me or our baby. Marcus looked away silently, anger burning in his chest. What was the manager's name? Sophia hesitated. Vanessa. Marcus nodded once slowly. Okay. Sophia immediately recognized that dangerous calm in her husband's voice. Marcus. Please don't do anything terrible. He looked at her quietly. My pregnant wife was humiliated and nearly abandoned while in labor inside my own supermarket. Sophia blinked slowly. You still don't understand, do you? Marcus continued softly. This isn't only about you. If they can treat you that way, imagine how they treat ordinary people every day." Silence filled the room. Deep down, Sophia knew he was right. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, Daniel sat alone quietly in the waiting area staring at his hands. His phone suddenly rang. The caller ID made his stomach drop instantly. Store manager Vanessa. He hesitated before answering slowly. "Hello, Mom." Vanessa's furious voice exploded through the phone immediately. "Where are you?" Daniel rubbed his forehead tiredly. "At the hospital." "Good. Stay there permanently because you no longer work for us." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. "I understand, Mom." "You embarrassed this supermarket today," she snapped angrily. "Customers uploaded videos online already because of your stupid behavior." Daniel remained silent. "People like you never learn," she continued bitterly. "Emotions don't build businesses." Daniel finally spoke quietly. "But humanity should matter." Vanessa laughed mockingly. "Humanity won't pay your bills after you become jobless." Then she ended the call. Daniel slowly lowered the phone and sighed deeply. Fear settled heavily inside him. He had expected this, but now reality was hitting hard. No job, no salary, no way to support his family. He leaned back against the chair and covered his face tiredly. A few minutes later, hospital doors opened again as Marcus stepped outside. His expensive suit jacket hung loosely over one shoulder, but the powerful aura around him remained impossible to ignore. His bodyguard stood nearby silently. Marcus walked directly toward Daniel. "You're still here?" Daniel stood quickly. "I just wanted to make sure she and the baby were okay." Marcus stared at him carefully before reaching into his pocket and pulling out a black card. "Take this." Daniel immediately shook his head. "No, sir, I wasn't helping because of money." Marcus nodded slowly. "I know." He stepped closer. "That's exactly why you deserve it." Daniel hesitated awkwardly. Marcus continued calmly. "Listen carefully, Daniel. Today you protected my family while others humiliated them. I won't forget that." Daniel looked down quietly. "Thank you, sir." Marcus suddenly asked, "Did the manager really threaten to fire you?" Daniel forced a small smile. "She already did." Marcus's eyes darkened instantly. "Good." Daniel looked confused. Marcus adjusted his wristwatch calmly. "Because tomorrow morning she won't have a job either." Daniel's eyes widened slightly. Before he could respond, one of the bodyguards stepped forward, holding a tablet nervously. "Sir, the videos from the supermarket are spreading online already." Marcus took the tablet and watched silently. The shaky phone video clearly showed Sophia crying on the supermarket floor, while Vanessa shouted angrily at security guards. Then Daniel appeared on screen, carrying Sophia outside, while customers argued loudly in the background. Marcus's expression became colder with every second. The final part of the video showed Vanessa screaming, "If you touch her again, you're fired." Marcus slowly handed the tablet back without speaking. The bodyguard swallowed nervously. "Sir," Marcus's voice dropped dangerously low, "prepare the board meeting tomorrow morning." "Yes, sir. And make sure every employee attends." "Understood." Daniel stood there confused by everything happening around him. He still had no idea who Marcus truly was. To him, Marcus simply looked like another wealthy businessman. Marcus suddenly looked back at Daniel again. "Go home and rest tonight." "Sir? You've done enough already." Daniel nodded slowly. "Thank you." Marcus gave him one final look before turning toward the hospital room again. But just before entering, he paused slightly and said something that made Daniel freeze completely. "Tomorrow morning, you'll understand why helping people is never a mistake." Then he disappeared inside the room. Daniel stood there confused as those words echoed inside his mind repeatedly. Back inside the hospital room, Sophia was quietly feeding the baby when Marcus entered again. "You're thinking too much," she said softly. Marcus loosened his tie tiredly. "Maybe." Sophia smiled faintly. "I know that look on your face." Marcus walked toward the window silently, overlooking the city lights outside. "Vanessa publicly humiliated a woman in labor," he said quietly. "Not just any woman. My wife." Sophia sighed softly. "What are you planning?" Marcus slowly turned toward her, his face calm but unreadable. "Tomorrow morning," he said quietly, "everyone in that supermarket is going to learn one lesson." He paused briefly before finishing coldly. Compassion matters more than position. The next morning, employees of the supermarket stood nervously inside the large conference hall, whispering among themselves. Nobody understood why an emergency board meeting had been called so suddenly. Workers exchanged worried glances while managers sat stiffly at the front of the room, pretending to remain calm. Vanessa adjusted her expensive blazer confidently and folded her arms. Although the viral videos from yesterday had caused tension online, she still believed she had protected the supermarket's reputation. In her mind, she had done nothing wrong. "Why would headquarters suddenly call all staff here?" one cashier whispered nervously. "I heard the video reached millions of views overnight," another worker replied quietly. "People are insulting the supermarket online." Vanessa rolled her eyes after overhearing them. "People on the internet complain about everything," she said dismissively. "By next week, everyone will forget." But before anyone could respond, the large conference doors suddenly opened. Silence immediately fell across the room. 4 men in black suits entered first, followed by Marcus. The moment he stepped inside, the atmosphere changed completely. Workers instantly straightened up nervously. Several managers stood immediately in respect. Vanessa's confident expression disappeared slowly as confusion crossed her face. She had seen Marcus before only a few times during annual executive meetings. The owner of the entire supermarket chain rarely appeared in person. But today he was here, and the dangerous calm on his face made the room feel ice-cold. Marcus walked slowly toward the front of the conference hall without speaking. His polished black shoes echoed softly against the marble floor. Behind him, his assistant carried a tablet while the board members followed silently. Nobody dared speak. Marcus finally stopped at the center of the room and looked around carefully at every employee present. "Good morning," he said calmly. "Good morning, sir," the workers replied nervously. Marcus nodded once before his eyes slowly landed on Vanessa. "Manager Vanessa." Vanessa immediately forced a smile and stood proudly. "Good morning, sir." Marcus stared at her silently for a few uncomfortable seconds. "Tell me something," he said quietly. Vanessa swallowed slightly. "Sir?" "Yesterday," Marcus continued calmly, "a pregnant woman went into labor inside this supermarket." The room became completely silent. Vanessa forced another smile. "Yes, sir. Unfortunately, there was a disturbance yesterday, but we handled the situation quickly before it damaged the store's image." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "The store's image?" "Yes, sir," Vanessa replied quickly. "Customers were recording videos and causing panic, so I instructed security to remove the situation before things became worse." Marcus repeated slowly, "Remove the situation." Vanessa nodded confidently, unaware of the storm about to hit her. "Exactly, sir. We needed to maintain order." Marcus suddenly looked toward the large screen behind him. "Play the video." Instantly, the conference screen lit up. The viral footage began playing loudly for everyone to see. Employees watched uncomfortably as Sophia screamed in pain on the supermarket floor, while customers stared helplessly. Then Vanessa's angry voice echoed across the speakers. "Throw her outside before customers start recording this mess." Murmurs spread across the room immediately. Vanessa's face slowly lost color. The video continued. Daniel appeared rushing toward Sophia, trying to help her, while Vanessa threatened him publicly. "If you touch her again, you're fired." Then the final scene showed Daniel carrying Sophia outside while she cried painfully in his arms. Silence swallowed the room after the video ended. Marcus slowly turned back toward Vanessa. "Do you know what disturbed me the most?" Vanessa opened her mouth nervously. "Sir, I can explain." "No," Marcus interrupted quietly. "You've spoken enough already." Vanessa immediately fell silent. Marcus stepped forward slowly, his voice remaining calm but sharp enough to cut through the room. "A woman was in labor." He paused briefly. "Not stealing, not fighting, not causing trouble." His eyes darkened dangerously. "She was bringing life into this world." Nobody moved, nobody breathed loudly. "And instead of helping her," Marcus continued softly, "you treated her like trash on the floor." Vanessa's hands began shaking slightly. "Sir, I was only trying to protect the business." Marcus stared directly into her eyes. "Then you have no business leading people." The room remained frozen. Vanessa's voice trembled now. "Sir, I didn't know who she was." Marcus took another slow step closer. "Exactly." That single word hit the room heavily. Confusion spread across several employees' faces instantly. Marcus continued calmly, "You didn't know who she was." He pointed toward the screen, showing Sophia crying on the floor. "You thought she was ordinary." Vanessa's breathing became uneven. Marcus's voice dropped lower. "That woman was my wife." Gasps exploded across the conference hall. Several workers covered their mouths in shock. One cashier nearly dropped her phone. Vanessa staggered backwards slightly, as if the floor beneath her had disappeared. "Sir, your wife?" Marcus nodded slowly. "The mother of my newborn daughter." Complete silence followed. Fear covered Vanessa's face completely now. I didn't know." Marcus's expression remained cold. "And if she wasn't my wife," he asked sharply, "would her life matter less?" Vanessa opened her mouth, but no words came out. Marcus turned away from her and faced the employees instead. Yesterday, one person inside that supermarket remembered what humanity looks like. The conference doors suddenly opened again. Daniel stepped inside, nervously wearing his old supermarket uniform. The moment workers saw him, whispers spread instantly across the room. Daniel froze after noticing Marcus standing at the front beside the board members. "Come forward, Daniel," Marcus said calmly. Daniel walked slowly toward the front, confused and uncomfortable under everyone's stare. Marcus turned toward the employees again. While others watched, while management cared more about social media videos, this young man chose compassion over fear. Daniel looked down awkwardly. Marcus continued, "He knew helping my wife could cost him his job." He paused briefly, but he helped her anyway. The room remained completely silent. Marcus finally faced Vanessa again. "You fired him yesterday, correct?" Vanessa lowered her head weakly. "Yes, sir." Marcus nodded once. "Good." He turned toward the board members, "Because starting today, Daniel officially becomes the new branch manager of this supermarket." The entire room erupted into shocked whispers. Daniel's eyes widened instantly. "Sir? What?" Marcus looked at him calmly. "Leadership is not about protecting buildings." He pointed toward Daniel gently. "It's about protecting people." Tears filled Daniel's eyes immediately. "Sir, I've never managed anything before." Marcus smiled faintly for the first time. A man who values human life already understands the most important part of leadership. Then Marcus turned back toward Vanessa one final time. His face hardened again instantly. "As for you," Vanessa trembled visibly, "you are terminated effective immediately." Her knees nearly gave out. "Sir, please." Marcus didn't even look at her anymore. "Escort her out." Two security guards slowly approached her. Ironically, they were the same guards she had ordered around the previous day. Vanessa looked around desperately at the silent employees before being led out of the conference room in humiliation. The doors closed behind her heavily. Marcus then looked back at Daniel calmly. "Congratulations, manager." Daniel stood frozen in the middle of the conference room as the words echoed repeatedly inside his head. New branch manager. It didn't feel real. Just yesterday he was arranging drinks on supermarket shelves and begging not to lose his job. Now every employee inside the room was staring at him with shock and respect. Marcus walked toward him calmly and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Do not let this position change your heart," he said quietly. Daniel nodded slowly, still overwhelmed. "Yes, sir." Marcus gave a faint smile. "Good, because that heart is the reason you're standing here today." Around the conference hall, workers began clapping softly. The applause slowly grew louder until the room filled with cheers. Some employees smiled proudly at Daniel, while others wiped tears quietly. Several workers who had watched helplessly during Sophia's humiliation now looked ashamed of themselves. Daniel swallowed hard emotionally. He had never imagined a moment like this in his life. Marcus turned toward the staff again. "Let yesterday be a lesson to everyone," he said firmly. "This company was not built only to make profit. It was built to serve people." The employees nodded silently. "Never forget this," Marcus continued calmly. "Money can rebuild a business. But once humanity dies inside a company, everything else dies with it." Silence filled the room after his words. Deep down, every worker knew he was right. Hours later, Daniel slowly walked through the supermarket wearing a clean new suit provided by the company. Everything felt strange. Workers who barely noticed him before now greeted him respectfully. "Good morning, Manager Daniel," one cashier said nervously. Daniel smiled awkwardly. "Please, just Daniel is fine." But even as people congratulated him, his heart remained humble. He still remembered carrying cartons only yesterday. He still remembered his mother praying every night for food and school fees. He knew how quickly life could change. Inside his new office upstairs, Daniel sat quietly staring at the large desk in front of him. The office alone was bigger than the tiny room he rented with his family. He slowly touched the desk nervously, almost afraid it wasn't real. Then suddenly, there was a knock on the door. "Come in," he said softly. The door opened slowly and Sophia stepped inside, holding her newborn baby carefully in her arms. Daniel stood immediately in surprise. "Mom," Sophia smiled warmly. Unlike yesterday, she looked peaceful now, glowing softly as she carried her daughter against her chest. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said gently. "No, ma'am, please sit." Sophia sat carefully across from him while the baby slept quietly. For a moment, Daniel simply stared emotionally at the tiny child. Sophia noticed his expression and smiled. "She's beautiful, isn't she?" Daniel nodded softly. "Very beautiful." Sophia looked at him carefully. "Because of you, she's alive and healthy today." Daniel quickly shook his head. "No, ma'am, God helped." Sophia smiled faintly. "Maybe, but God also used you." Daniel lowered his eyes quietly. Sophia continued softly, "Do you know what hurt me most yesterday?" Daniel looked up slowly. It wasn't the pain. It wasn't even the humiliation. She gently kissed her baby's forehead. It was realizing how easily people can ignore suffering when they think someone is unimportant. Daniel remained silent. "Everybody watched," Sophia whispered sadly, "but you moved." Tears formed slightly in Daniel's eyes. Sophia reached into her handbag and placed a small envelope gently on the table. "Please take this." Daniel frowned immediately. "Mom?" "It's not payment," she interrupted softly. "Nothing can truly repay kindness." Daniel slowly opened the envelope and his eyes widened instantly. Inside was a document for a fully furnished 3-bedroom apartment. His hands began trembling. "Ma'am, this—" Sophia smiled warmly. "Your mother and sister deserve a better home." Daniel could barely speak. I don't know what to say." Sophia's eyes softened kindly. "Say you'll continue being the man you already are." Tears finally escaped Daniel's eyes as he lowered his head emotionally. "Thank you," he whispered weakly. Just then, Marcus appeared quietly at the office door, watching the emotional moment silently. Sophia looked toward him and smiled. "Your new manager cries too much," she teased lightly. Marcus chuckled softly as he entered the office. "That's better than having one without a heart." Daniel quickly stood again. "Sir." Marcus waved him down gently. "Relax." He walked toward the office window, overlooking the busy supermarket below. Customers moved around peacefully while workers assisted them politely. The atmosphere felt completely different now, kinder, warmer. Marcus folded his arms quietly. "Do you know something interesting?" he asked suddenly. Daniel shook his head. Marcus smiled faintly while looking downstairs. "Sales increased this morning." Daniel blinked in surprise. "Sir?" Marcus nodded. "People online heard what happened." He turned back toward Daniel. "And now they want to support a supermarket that values humanity." Daniel stared silently. Marcus continued calmly. "Vanessa thought compassion would destroy business." He smiled slightly. "Turns out compassion built stronger business instead." Sophia laughed softly. "Funny how life works sometimes." A peaceful silence filled the office for a moment before Marcus looked seriously at Daniel again. "You'll make mistakes as manager," he said honestly. "Everyone does." Daniel nodded slowly. "But never become the type of the leader who forgets what pain looks like." Daniel's voice became firm. "I won't, sir." Marcus studied him for a second before smiling proudly. "Good." Days turned into weeks, and slowly Daniel settled into his new position. But unlike many managers before him, he never treated workers harshly. He greeted cleaners respectfully. He helped cashiers during busy hours. He personally checked on sick employees. And little by little, the supermarket changed completely. Workers smiled more. Customers felt welcomed. Even online, people praised the supermarket's kindness and humanity. One afternoon, Daniel stood near the entrance greeting customers when he noticed an elderly woman struggling to carry heavy bags. Without hesitation, he rushed forward to help her. Several workers nearby smiled quietly as they watched him. One cashier whispered softly, "That's why he became manager." Upstairs in his office, Marcus stood beside the glass window, watching Daniel help the old woman outside. Sophia stood beside him, holding their daughter gently. "You chose the right person," she said softly. Marcus smiled faintly. "No," he replied quietly, "humanity chose him first." Downstairs, Daniel helped the old woman into a taxi before returning toward the supermarket entrance. As he walked back inside, customers greeted him warmly. Workers smiled proudly at him, and for the first time in his life, Daniel truly understood something powerful. Kindness may not make someone rich overnight, but one act of compassion can completely change a person's destiny forever. And somewhere deep inside that supermarket, the lesson remained alive long after the humiliation, the tears, and the viral videos disappeared. Because sometimes the people who change our lives are not the richest, the loudest, or the most powerful. Sometimes they are simply the ones willing to stop and help when everyone else walks away. Now tell me honestly, if you were Daniel, would you risk losing your job to help that pregnant woman? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more emotional stories like this. Until next time, remember, kindness always returns in ways we never expect.